Tragedy strikes Bates family. Michaela Bates and Brandon Keilen die in car accident. It was a quiet morning in Tennessee. The sun rose gently over the hills, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and pink. Life seemed calm, peaceful, and ordinary. Just another day in the Bates family's world. Michaela Bates Keilen, known for her gentle heart and quiet grace, had always carried a warmth that touched everyone around her. She was thoughtful, kind, and deeply rooted in her faith. To those who knew her, she was more than a daughter, more than a sister. She was the heart that held people together. Brandon Keilen, her husband, shared that same quiet strength. The two had built a life grounded in love, patience, and unshakable faith. Though they lived a simple life, it was filled with purpose. From long drives through the countryside to handwritten notes they left for each other every morning. They had a way of finding joy in the smallest of things. A sunset, a song, or even the sound of rain on their window. Family often described them as inseparable. Two souls that seemed to understand each other without words. They laughed together, prayed together, and stood beside one another through every season of life. Friends would often say that being around them felt like peace itself. On that particular morning, there was no sign that the world was about to change. Michaela had called her mother earlier, talking about plans for the weekend. Brandon had been working on something for his ministry, his voice calm and steady like always. Everything felt ordinary, beautifully ordinary, until fate took a turn that no one could ever have imagined. Sometimes, life doesn't warn us before it changes. It just happens, quietly, suddenly, and without reason. That morning would soon become the line between before and after for everyone who loved them. It was late afternoon when the sky began to turn gray. The air felt heavy, carrying the stillness that often comes before a storm. Michaela and Brandon had spent most of the day together, just the two of them, driving out to visit friends a few towns away. Those who saw them that day remembered their smiles, how Brandon had opened the door for her like he always did, and how Michaela's laughter filled the air as they waved goodbye. No one knew that those simple moments would become memories that people would hold on to forever. The road they took was one they had driven hundreds of times before. Quiet, winding through the Tennessee countryside, surrounded by tall trees and endless fields. It wasn't dangerous, just familiar. And maybe that's what makes fate so cruel. Tragedy doesn't always wait for danger. Sometimes, it hides in the ordinary. As the afternoon faded, clouds began to gather, and a light drizzle brushed against the windshield. Brandon, ever careful, slowed down. Michaela hummed softly beside him, her voice blending with the soft patter of rain. Everything still felt calm, nothing seemed wrong. But just a few miles ahead, another car was coming from the opposite direction, speeding, unaware that a single moment was about to change countless lives. Back at home, the Bates family was going about their evening as usual. Kelly Jo was preparing dinner, Gil was on a call, and some of the kids were sharing laughter in the living room. There was no sign, no feeling, no whisper of what was about to unfold miles away. Then time, as if guided by something unseen, began to slow. The rain grew heavier, the road slicker. In a fraction of a second, that oncoming car lost control, swerving across the lane. Brandon barely had time to react. Tires screeched, glass shattered, and silence followed. The kind of silence that feels too deep, too final. No one saw it coming. No one could have. In that moment, the world that had once been full of laughter, music, and faith fell still. For hours, the Bates family didn't know. They had no idea that their phones would soon ring, that their world, the very heartbeat of their family, would be broken in ways words could never describe. Because sometimes, the most devastating moments arrive without warning. 1 minute, life is everything you know. The next, it's everything you've lost. Evening had fallen quietly over the Bates home. The soft hum of voices and the warmth of family filled the rooms. Kelly Jo was setting the table, humming a hymn like she always did when everyone was home for dinner. Gil was reading something on his desk, occasionally smiling as the sound of laughter drifted from the kitchen. It was peaceful. The kind of peace that makes a house feel alive. Then the phone rang. It was a sound so ordinary. Yet that night it carried the weight of the unthinkable. Kelly Jo answered it without hesitation, her voice gentle and familiar. But what came through the other end wasn't words she could process. It was panic, confusion, broken sentences. Someone from the local authorities. A car accident. 2 people. Their names. The room went still. Her hand trembled. The phone slipping slightly as if her body refused to believe what her ears had heard. No, that can't be right, she whispered, her voice fading. But the voice on the other end was firm, sorrowful, and real. Gil looked up, his expression turning from curiosity to fear as he saw the color drain from her face. She couldn't speak, she didn't have to. He knew. Somehow, before she could say it, he already knew. Michaela and Brandon. The names that were always spoken with love, pride, and warmth now hung in the air like shattered glass. The world seemed to stop. No movement. No sound. Just the heavy, unbearable silence that only grief can bring. Word spread quickly among the family. The children gathered, one by one, confusion turning to disbelief. Erin broke down first, clutching her hands over her mouth, whispering prayers through tears. Keilen sobbed uncontrollably, repeating, "No, please no," as if denial could turn back time. Nathan stood frozen, unable to move, while Lawson's eyes filled with tears that refused to fall. The kind of tears that burn but never release. Gil wrapped his arms around Kelly Jo, holding her as if she might fall apart, because in a way, she already had. Her body shook with a grief no mother should ever feel. Her heart was breaking not once, but twice, for a daughter and for the son-in-law she had come to love as her own. Outside, the rain had started again. It tapped gently against the windows, a quiet rhythm that filled the house like the echo of heartbreak. Each drop felt like a tear from heaven, as if the skies themselves mourned with them. The night stretched endlessly. Hours passed, but no one moved much. Every sound, every thought felt distant. The world had shifted, and nothing felt real anymore. They prayed, not for a miracle now, but for strength. They prayed for peace, for understanding, for the will to face the morning. Because somehow, even in the darkest hour, faith was the only thing they had left to hold on to. And in that silence, among tears and disbelief, one truth settled quietly. Life would never, ever be the same again. The morning after the accident was heavy with sorrow. The sun rose, but it offered no warmth, only a pale light that barely touched the hearts of those who had been left behind. The Bates family moved through the day like ghosts, each step burdened with memories, love, and unbearable grief. They whispered Michaela and Brandon's names softly, almost afraid that speaking them too loudly would shatter the fragile reality around them. Friends and extended family arrived, each carrying their own silent heartbreak. No one spoke too loudly, no laughter to distract from the pain. Only embraces that held more meaning than words could ever express. Every tear, every sigh, every hand clasped tightly in another's, was a testament to the love Michaela and Brandon had inspired. The world seemed to have paused for them. People shared stories, small, tender moments of kindness, generosity, and laughter that Brandon and Michaela had given freely. One neighbor remembered how Michaela had baked bread for someone sick, her gentle smile lighting up the room. Another spoke of Brandon, quietly helping at the local church, always humble, always willing to lift someone else's burden. Every story, every memory, was a thread weaving together a tapestry of lives touched and hearts forever changed. The funeral was quiet, almost reverent. The chapel was filled with flowers, white lilies and soft roses, symbols of purity, peace, and love that never dies. The family sat together, holding one another, clinging to the warmth of human touch when the world felt unbearably cold. Every eye glistened with tears, every chest heaved with the weight of sorrow too deep for words. Kelly Jo stood, her hands trembling, holding on to the memory of her daughter, her heart aching with a pain no mother should endure. Gil whispered prayers under his breath, his own tears falling freely, trying to gather strength for the rest of the family. The children, though broken, stayed close together, sharing silence, prayer, and memories, as if by being together they could keep Michaela and Brandon's spirit alive. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, as though carrying messages from a world unseen. The sky was overcast, yet a single beam of light broke through, illuminating the chapel in a soft glow. A reminder, perhaps, that love never truly dies. In the days that followed, grief settled like a quiet shadow over the Bates family, and everyone who had known Michaela and Brandon. Life continued, but the absence was undeniable. Every ordinary moment, Every shared laugh, every gentle touch, carried the echo of what had been lost. Yet even in the midst of this unimaginable sorrow, there was a glimmer of hope. The memories of Michaela and Brandon, their faith, their kindness, and the love they had spread, continued to live on in every heart they had touched. The tragedy left a scar, deep and permanent, but it also reminded everyone that life is fragile, precious, and fleeting. And in that reminder, there was an unspoken call to hold loved ones closer, to cherish every moment, and to carry forward the legacy of those whose light had been extinguished far too soon. Weeks passed, but the weight of Michaela and Brandon's absence never lifted. Each morning, the Bates family awoke to silence where laughter once lived, and every small gesture reminded them of what had been lost. Chairs sat empty, rooms felt hollow, and even the sunlight seemed softer, gentler, as if mourning with them. Yet amid the grief, life quietly demanded continuation. Meals were shared, chores completed, prayers offered, not out of obligation, but because Michaela and Brandon had taught them to live with kindness, patience, and faith. Each act of care became a way to honor their memory. Every smile that broke through tears was a tribute to the love they had given freely, unconditionally. The children began to speak about them again, sharing stories, laughing at moments remembered, crying at moments missed. They found solace in each other, weaving a tapestry of remembrance that would carry their parents' essence forward. Friends and community members joined in, recounting simple acts of generosity, moments of quiet laughter, and the deep faith that had defined Michaela and Brandon. In the midst of heartbreak, the warmth of collective memory offered a fragile, sustaining light. It was in those quiet, ordinary moments, a shared meal, a song hummed softly, a prayer offered for the first time in years, that their presence lingered. They were gone, yet they remained, woven into every heartbeat, every whispered prayer, every act of love that the family now carried in their stead. Time, though relentless, brought perspective. Grief softened but never vanished. It transformed into a reverent awareness that life was fragile, precious, and fleeting. The tragedy had left its mark, undeniable and permanent, yet it had also illuminated the depth of love, the strength of family, and the unspoken bonds that endure beyond death. And in every tear shed, every memory spoken, and every act of kindness extended to another, Michaela and Brandon's spirit endured. They had departed from the world too soon, but they left behind a legacy, a reminder that love is eternal, that the lives we touch ripple far beyond our own, and that even in the face of unimaginable loss, the human heart can carry both sorrow and hope. The Bates family, forever changed, walked forward with heavy hearts but strengthened souls. They carried with them the laughter, the faith, and the gentle love of Michaela and Brandon, ensuring that while their time was brief, their impact would never fade. And though the world had been altered in a single, devastating moment, the story of their love, their life, and their grace would live on, quietly, profoundly, and forever in the hearts of all who knew them. Months had passed since that fateful day, yet time seemed to move differently now. For the Bates family, there was life before the accident, and life after it. Everything in between felt like a lifetime they could never return to. The pain had not disappeared, but it had changed shape. No longer sharp and unbearable, but a quiet ache that lived in every heartbeat. Seasons shifted. Winter melted into spring, and flowers began to bloom again around the family home. The same garden Michaela used to tend was now full of color, lilies, roses, and soft daisies swaying in the wind. Kelly Jo would often pause there, kneeling down beside the flowers, her hands resting on the earth. Sometimes she would whisper Michaela's name, other times she would simply smile through tears, knowing that somehow, her daughter was still there, in the light, in the wind, in the life that continued. Gil spent more time outside, fixing small things around the house, not because they needed fixing, but because movement kept the grief at bay. And yet, in every quiet moment, his thoughts drifted back to Michaela and Brandon, to their laughter, their faith, their steady kindness. Sometimes he would look up at the sky and whisper, "We're doing our best down here," as though they could still hear him. The siblings carried their memories forward in their own ways. Lawson wrote a song, not to be released, but to be kept close, a song that captured both sorrow and peace. Aaron painted a picture of a sunrise, calling it eternal mourning. Keilen kept a small framed photo on her nightstand, so that Michaela's smile was the last thing she saw before she went to sleep. Each of them carried something, not to hold on to the pain, but to preserve the love. The community, too, had changed. Every year, on the day of the accident, they gathered quietly, not to mourn, but to remember. They lit candles, shared stories, and prayed for strength. It wasn't about loss anymore. It was about gratitude. Gratitude for two lives that had shone so brightly, even if only for a while. Faith remained their anchor. In every tear and every prayer, there was the same belief, that love never ends, that heaven is closer than it seems, and that one day, every broken heart will find its peace again. And so the Bates family continued, not the same as before, but strong in a new, fragile way. They learned to smile again, to laugh, to live. Not because the pain was gone, but because love had taught them how to keep moving even through it. Some nights, when the world was quiet, Kelly Jo would look up at the stars, and for a moment, she would feel it. The warmth, the peace, the certainty that Michaela and Brandon were not truly gone. They were part of every sunrise, every breeze, every prayer whispered into the stillness. They had simply gone ahead. To a place without sorrow, without pain, where love exists in its purest form. And though their story on earth had ended, the echo of their lives, gentle, faithful, eternal, would remain forever. Because some love stories do not end in goodbye. They end in forever. Time, in its quiet, relentless way, continued to move forward. The world carried on. Yet for those who had loved Michaela and Brandon, every moment carried their absence. Each sunrise reminded them of mornings spent together. Every gentle rain mirrored the tears they had shed. The earth itself seemed to hold the memory of their presence, soft and enduring. The Bates family had learned a new rhythm of life, one that honored both grief and love. They laughed again, cautiously at first, then fully, as if each smile could carry a part of Michaela and Brandon back to them. Conversations about what could have been slowly transformed into stories about what was, celebrating moments that had been real, tender, and profound. Friends and extended family continued to gather, drawn together not by sorrow alone, but by the shared weight of remembrance. They spoke of simple acts, Michaela's gentle encouragement to those struggling, Brandon's unwavering support for friends and neighbors. Each memory was a spark, small but bright, illuminating the darkness left behind by their sudden departure. Even in the ordinary, their influence persisted. A child picking up a hymn book, a neighbor receiving unexpected help, a shared laugh over a memory. In these moments, Michaela and Brandon lived on. Their lives had been brief in years, but boundless in impact. The family found solace not in forgetting, but in remembering. They planted trees in their honor, wrote letters never to be sent, and continued traditions that celebrated their lives. Every act was a quiet testament. Love does not vanish with the body. It survives in actions, in hearts, in the very way people live. And in the stillness of the night, when the house was quiet, Kelly Jo and Gil would sit together, hands entwined, recalling the lives of their daughter and son-in-law. They spoke softly, not to mourn but to honor. Their words carried gratitude, sorrow, and hope. A hope rooted in the belief that Michaela and Brandon were watching over them, that their light was eternal, and that life, fragile as it is, could still be beautiful. The world had been irrevocably changed that day. But love, as Michaela and Brandon had shown, is stronger than loss. It echoes, it lingers, and it endures beyond what the eye can see or the heart can bear. And so, the story does not end in sorrow alone. It lives in every whispered prayer, every act of kindness, every tear and every smile. Michaela and Brandon's journey on earth was short, but their legacy, gentle, steadfast, and eternal, would remain forever in the lives they touched. Life, even in its most heartbreaking moments, continues. But for those who loved them, every heartbeat, every breath, every quiet moment is a reminder. They were here. They mattered. They loved. And in that love, there is forever. Months turned into a year, and yet, the echo of that day lingered like a shadow in the hearts of all who loved Michaela and Brandon. Every corner of the Bates home held memories. A jacket left on a chair, a favorite mug still on the counter, a song that played softly on the radio and brought tears without warning. Life continued, but it carried a new weight. A mixture of grief and gratitude, sorrow and remembrance. The family learned that healing was not about forgetting. It was about carrying the love forward, about living in a way that honored those they had lost. They celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, shared meals and prayers, each act a tribute to Michaela and Brandon. Their legacy was present in every kind word spoken, every small gesture of care, and every moment of compassion extended to others. The community, too, began to feel the depth of their loss. Neighbors, friends, and those who had been touched by their quiet acts of love came together in remembrance. They shared stories of hope and faith, of laughter and guidance, of two lives that had changed many without fanfare or recognition. In these gatherings, sorrow was palpable, but so was love. The enduring kind that bridges absence and presence, life and memory. For the Bates family, faith became the anchor. They prayed together, not to bring back the past, but to find strength for the future. Each prayer was a whisper of connection, a dialogue with the memory of Michaela and Brandon. Sometimes the wind through the trees or the soft glow of a sunset would bring a sense of peace, a silent reminder that those they loved were still near in spirit, still guiding, still loving. The children found ways to honor their parents. They wrote journals, planted gardens, and performed small acts of kindness in their name. Every laugh, every tear, every act of service became a living memorial. The presence of Michaela and Brandon was no longer in sight, but in action, in heart, and in the quiet moments that stitched their memory into the fabric of everyday life. Even in the most ordinary days, their influence remained profound. The simplest of gestures, a shared smile, a helping hand, a song sung softly in remembrance, became vessels of love that transcended grief. Life, fragile and fleeting, had been forever altered, but the spirit of Michaela and Brandon endured in every person whose heart they had touched. And so, the story finds its quiet conclusion. Tragedy may have taken them too soon, but it could not diminish the impact of their lives. Love remains. Memories remain. Faith endures. And in those things Michaela and Brandon live on, not as shadows, but as a light that continues to guide, inspire, and comfort all who remember them. Life moves forward, hearts slowly heal, and yet the echo of their love remains eternal. Even in absence, they are present. Even in silence, they speak. And in every act of love, every prayer, every memory cherished, they are remembered, not as lost, but as forever. Because some souls, though gone from sight, remain in heart, spirit, and the world they helped make brighter. Michaela and Brandon were such souls. Time had passed, yet the weight of loss remained, a quiet ache in every corner of the Bates family's hearts. Each morning brought memories, every evening whispers of what once was. Michaela and Brandon were gone, but their presence lingered in ways words could never fully capture. In the warmth of a smile, in the softness of a prayer, in the echo of laughter that still seemed to float through the halls of the home they had loved. The family learned slowly, painfully, that grief does not fade, it transforms. It became a tender reminder of love, of moments shared, and of the lives that had been intertwined. In every act of kindness, every gentle word, every shared memory, Michaela and Brandon lived on. Their love, quiet yet unwavering, had become a part of every heartbeat, a part of every decision, a part of the life the family continued to build. Kelly Jo would often sit quietly in the garden Michaela loved so dearly, tracing the flowers with her hands, whispering words of love to a daughter who was no longer there. Gil would watch the sunset, remembering Brandon's quiet strength, feeling it in the soft light that bathed the hills. The children, too, carried their parents' legacy, in laughter, in tears, in prayers, and in every act of compassion. The community remembered them, too. Stories were shared, candles lit, prayers offered. Michaela and Brandon's lives had been short, but their impact had been immense. They had taught everyone around them that love matters, that faith sustains, and that even the smallest gestures of kindness leave an eternal mark. And in the quiet moments, when the world seemed still, the family felt it, a gentle presence, a reassurance that Michaela and Brandon were near. Not in body, but in spirit. Not in sight, but in heart. Every smile, every tear, every act of love carried their essence forward. A reminder that life may be fleeting, but love is forever. Theirs was a story of love, faith, and unbreakable bonds. Though tragedy had come, it could not erase what had been. Michaela and Brandon's memory was a light that would continue to shine, guiding, comforting, inspiring. Life moves on, but hearts never forget. And in every whispered prayer, every shared memory, every kind act, they remain forever. Because some souls leave footprints that time cannot erase. Michaela and Brandon are such souls.